Well, good morning, and thank you to our witnesses from Mahtomedi, Mounds View, St. Anthony, New Brighton, South Washington County, and White Bear Lake Schools for appearing today to provide testimony about how the American Rescue Plan is being implemented in our school districts. I want to thank you for the service to our community, especially during the ongoing pandemic. You've had the pandemic plus 2 waves to deal with, and our educators, leaders, community leaders have gone above and beyond to support our principals, staff, teachers, their families, and students throughout the most challenging time faced in our generation with the public health emergency. It's important that we look back on what we faced in 2020 in our communities across the country, and let's face it, around the world. We faced an unprecedented pandemic. It put every person's life at risk. It stressed our healthcare system to the breaking point. It closed schools, it crippled our economy, and it exposed all the economic, social, religious, and racial divides that undermine our society and the well-being of tens of millions of Americans. We were in a crisis. At the same time back then, our country was run by a president who propagated his own crisis, rejected the science, and failed to respond in the early phases of the pandemic. I want to be clear, I understand that this crisis is not over yet. Despite the process, families, schools, and our democracy, well, we're still struggling. My Democratic House colleagues and I stepped up to work with President Biden and local communities in a hand-to-hand to provide federal funding and tools to build back better for a brighter future. We saved lives, we saved jobs, we saved businesses, and we prevented millions of families from falling into poverty. We know we've made major progress from a year ago, but the Omicron variant has forced us all to recalibrate, especially in our schools. And I want to commend Governor Walz, a former social studies teacher like myself, for encouraging vaccines and testing at schools. And I hope whatever your community health targeted response was, that it's working well for you. Most of you are in Ramsey County, and so I'm very familiar with what we're doing there. And I've been educated on what's going on in Washington County. But I know that your students have endured much during this crisis. And I know you're doing everything you can to help students with their social and emotional, as well as their educational needs. Keeping schools open, keeping kids in school is a priority, but we all know it must be done safely. We are asking an awful lot of you as superintendents, teachers, instructors, and school board members and chairs. We're asking so much from you. As a member of Congress, it's my job to work with you to make sure that you have the resources you need and that they're presented to you in a way in which you can use them to fit the needs of your school district. We also have worked really hard with the American Rescue Plan. We know that it sped up vaccine distribution. It helped with testing. It helped with small business relief. It put food on the table and kept students' stomachs full. And a lot of that delivery fell on you. Thank you for doing that. We also know that we needed to keep kids and educators safe in school and allow local units of government to maintain essential services. The law also made a down payment on cutting child poverty in half by expanding the tax credit and making it fully refundable. However, it's sad that I have to report that this has expired because the extension right now is being blocked from continuing on in the Senate, primarily by members of the other side of the aisle. We also provided funding for more affordable childcare and increasing resources for Head Start and more. We also had another thing that we worked on, and that was doing what we could to protect our crumbling infrastructure. So there's $7 billion that went to Minnesota, and that passed in a bipartisan infrastructure bill that many of you are aware of. We're excited about the opportunity to create good paying union jobs and rebuilding America's infrastructure. Thirdly, in the Build Back Better Act for the future, we're working, and that is the bill that's stuck in the Senate right now. And we did the physical infrastructure, but we were also working on the human infrastructure bill. And that bill is going to, if we can pass it and move forward, create an average of 12 million jobs each year, 2 million jobs each year over the next decade. So I'm excited about the Build Back Better process. It's going through a scrubbing called the Bird Rule, and then in the U.S. House, we're calling it the Bird Bath, to figure out what the Senate will work with us on the human infrastructure side. But we are facing people who are not supportive of a lot of things in that bill, and the child tax credit is one example of that. And it was a lifeline for many of the families of the students that you work with. I look forward to hearing from you, though. This is about doing some oversight and due diligence so I can make sure that if we are providing funding and there are still things in the way that are not allowing you to expedite that funding in a way that fits your unique school district or the needs of your students, that we do so. But right now, I would just like to say that the law currently is delivering $240 million to Minnesota cities, because the health of our cities are important to our school districts, $107 million to Ramsey County, $50 million to the portions of Washington County, and more than $300 million in aid for school districts in the 4th district. So it's to keep our schools open, to keep them safe. It's for students, it's for faculty. It needs to have the flexibility you need in order to deliver what you need to deliver for your students and for your families. Montmedy School, it was over $600,000. Mounds View, nearly $10 million. St. Anthony New Brighton, over $800,000. South Washington County, nearly $3 million. And White Bear Lake area, over $6 million. So the law is delivering $130 billion to state departments of education to help keep schools open and safe and valuable learning for our children. We know that have lost time in the classroom. And as hard as everybody worked on virtual learning with the clicks on, clicks off, we know that we are not doing the job that we're all capable of doing in providing a great education for our students. You know, the American Rescue Plan, it had the categories of K-12 schools, but one of the things in K-12 schools, it had $30 billion for individuals with the Disability Education Act. And those are some of our most vulnerable students. And I know we all want to make sure that they have the same opportunity to succeed. The rescue plan was providing $1.4 billion for Minnesota schools in general, K through 12. It was the essential resources that I talked about so that you could do what you needed to do to keep your schools open safely. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And I saw some of you have some great information. If you would provide any information that you're using visually, you have Sally Gagney's information, or Rebecca Taylor, or Sophia Schilling. Sally works in our Minnesota office. That's her name up there. Some of you have worked with her on it. Rebecca Taylor is my head over non-defense staff, and has a PhD and works on education herself, so she really understands what's going on. And many of you work with Sophia over things over the years. So we're going to turn it over to Montmedy first. So Superintendent, if you would take it away, and if you have a school board member who's going to speak, please introduce them.
Over the course of the pandemic, Montmedy Public Schools has been awarded about a total of $2,200,000 in one-time funding to address those COVID-19 related expenses. We did receive funding from the federal grants, but also a local grant from Washington County when Washington County was determining how to use their federal funds as well. Without these COVID-19 related grants, our district would have needed to address the impact of COVID-19 and the needs of our students regardless, and we would have to have done it through our general fund. And so this would have taken funding away from the classrooms. And so accepting these grants meant that our district could both address the impact of COVID-19 without impacting our critical funding we depend on for our classrooms. So we're very thankful for all the funding that we've received to support our staff and students. So during the 2021 school year, we did have to go through 4 learning models. Hybrid, we started with hybrid, we went to distance learning, we returned to hybrid, and then in-person learning. So during that, our response to those learning model changes were supported by pandemic funding by allowing us to hire additional staff to lower our class sizes so that during our elementary hybrid model, we were still able to keep our students 4 days in person. We also provided special education program and intervention program during distance learning. So year round, our students with our highest needs were able to be in person at least partially during each week. It also allowed us for the coordination and support staff for our tier 1 care. In order to prepare for that 2021 school year, we did have a partial program for devices for technology, but we were able to expand so that we had a device for every learner during the pandemic. And that continues now. And that was a critical part for supporting our students and staff. We also were able to expand our summer programming, including transportation, which has not been something we've always been able to do, is transport to our summer programming. So we were able to expand that summer programming and offer academic recovery for more students during the summer. And that continues to be our plan for this coming summer as well. Around health and safety, we were able to do an evaluation of our indoor air quality and do some improvements to all our buildings. We hired additional cleaning staff. And then of course, it also provided additional sanitizing supplies and also masks and PPE for our staff. We started a pilot testing program before testing was widely available also, which was funded from our pandemic funding.
Can't underscore enough the impact that this funding and these resources, as Superintendent Dufferin highlighted and Superintendent Lennox will have had on our operations. So with that, I will pass it over to the person who's actually doing the real work. I just get to do like the school board stuff. Mr. Lennox.
I will say that the American Rescue Plan funding has been incredibly valuable and very important to our school district. And specifically, Mounds View Public Schools has actually received about $11.9 million in federal funding over this period. That's really an increase of about 7% to our overall budget. To put that in perspective, these funds really have assisted us in a number of ways. But I would say increased staffing is one of the ways I'd want to highlight today, addressing student needs, specific student learning areas, learning loss, mental health, social emotional support, technology devices, tools, as well as software, and COVID-19 supplies, including cleaning supplies, sanitation, all of the testing, and PPE that we've needed to purchase throughout the pandemic. And I'd harken back when this pandemic first started, schools in Minnesota really were moved into distance learning. So we immediately went into that model. And in Mounds View Public Schools, that's not something we had done before. While we certainly have technology in our classrooms and had some curriculum and content online for our students, distance learning required us to move into that model comprehensively. And so sending devices home with each of our students became a priority for us. We had to make sure that each one of our students had a device so that they would be able to access this instruction online through this new online learning model. Now, beyond the devices that we needed to secure and get to our students, it also required internet connectivity. So we had to make some significant investments for hotspots. We also partnered with families and providers to create internet connections for our families. That really was happening across our district at that point. I just think we'd really be remiss if we didn't mention the growing mental health needs we're seeing with our students. This pandemic has taken a toll on all of us, and certainly on our students' mental health and social emotional well-being. We've seen some dramatic increases in the need for support in this particular area. So in our district, we've begun shifting resources and adding resources across all of our schools. We've been able to secure partnerships with some of our local health providers to allow us to best meet those needs. So now I'm happy to say in all of our schools, we have dedicated support staff who are available to support students and families really on a daily basis as needed. We've also increased partnerships with local health providers. So now again, at all of our sites, students have access to therapists for individual support should that be needed. And again, we're seeing that increase over the course of this pandemic. We see this as a significant and ongoing area where we're going to need to continue to invest resources. And we certainly intend to continue to prioritize our resources in this area, supporting all of our students. So in closing, I might just say how much we truly appreciate what the American Rescue Plan funding has been able to do for us in the Mounds View Public Schools. I know we wouldn't have been able to meet the needs, many and varying needs that we've seen throughout the pandemic without that support. So thank you, much appreciated.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Representative McCollum, for the opportunity to share the work that we have done at St. Anthony New Brighton Schools using the American Rescue Plan funds. My name is Laura Oxnevad, and I'm the chairperson of the St. Anthony New Brighton School Board. I will give a very brief overview of our district and then pass the microphone over to our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Renee Corney. So St. Anthony New Brighton is the smallest geographic district in the state of Minnesota. Our district consists of one preschool, one elementary school, one middle school, one high school, with approximately 1,780 students K through 12. We like to say we are small, but mighty.
What we learned from COVID was that COVID made everything in the world, potentially all of the issues in our world, more vivid in color. Those things that we all maybe knew existed, those inequities, COVID brought out those inequities in brighter, more vibrant colors. And so as we looked at that, we said to ourselves, well, as we think about the funding we are receiving, this one-time funding that is so important, how does that allow us to come back potentially from COVID-19, not just to where we were, but better and more equitable? Our number one use of our funds really came in 1, 2, and 3, which was saying, how do we address learning and potentially interrupted learning, but not just do it by providing kids with more worksheets in red pens marking their mistakes, but really envisioning it with social emotional depth, and how do we add community to that, and creating a system where our school becomes the sanctuary for learning and building citizens for our future. And so that is where we really focus the majority of our funding. And we did that through the core of what schools do, and that is teaching and learning within the steeping of relationships and social emotional wellness. We also knew that we needed to have our children in the building to accomplish that. And so we needed to prioritize in-person learning, especially coming off of distance learning. And so we spent a lot of our funds to ensure, and again, it's not as much fun to talk about your HVAC systems, but really that circulation of air is really what allows us to allow kids into our system. We also promoted and pushed for vaccinations. Minnesota Department of Health actually called us and said, why don't you have any COVID cases there? And really, we weren't hiding. We really didn't have many COVID cases. And it was because of our high vaccination rate, our awesome filtration system, and a commitment to masking, as well as our testing. And so that was really available, and we were able to do that as a super small district because of the funding that we had.
First of all, I'd like to take this time to thank you, Congressman McCollum, for all the work you do for all of us, for the state of Minnesota, for our communities. We need more people like you. This has truly been an unprecedented time, none like we've ever experienced before. South Washington County is so grateful for the funding we received. We have over 19,000 students, 28 schools with 40% minority enrollment, 13.1% of students who are economically disadvantaged. So these funds truly, truly are needed in our district.
As part of the American Rescue Plan, South Washington County Schools received $8.6 million. And I told Dan that I would highlight the big three, and he can take all of the small pieces. And so our big three, and I do have a one-pager that I will forward on so that you have those notes. The big three really are this. First, the majority of dollars are going to be spent as we move into this coming budget year and the following budget year, and that is to reduce class size across our K-12 system. That $3.6 million allows us to invest approximately 14 to 15 additional staff members for this coming school year, and then into the next school year. And we know that they're one-time dollars, but we are ever so grateful during this recovery phase to be able to do that. Secondly, it was truly, the dollars came at just the right time for our elementary virtual learning academy. For those of you on the call, you know that staffing occurs typically in January. And at that point, we were not sure about what we were going to do in terms of offering a K-6 virtual option. We ended up offering a K-6 virtual option. We had 330 students enrolled. And so that started this year. We currently still have 270 students enrolled in our virtual option. And what that allowed us to do is to have dedicated staff for our virtual option, meaning that if students went back to their classroom, we were already staffed at the correct ratios. And so this allowed us flexibility as students maybe moved in between the virtual learning as well as in person. We had great success. I think it speaks for itself that we started with 330 students, and throughout this whole year, we still are hanging on to 270. We found so much success that we also now are considering a SOWASHCO online for our K-5 students. And just to give you a little idea of impact, we had 2 sections of K through 5. And because of the vaccinations, we did offer a 6th grade virtual option, and we did have about 30 students who enrolled as 6th graders to be in that virtual option. So our elementaries are K-5, but we did allow for that 6th grade option. And then our third area of spending, expanded summer programming. And what we did in South Washington County is we allowed our principals working with their school teams to come up with ideas and to submit those for additional dollars. So whether that be remedial activities, enrichment activities. And so our schools had the opportunity to submit similar to a grant for dollars that we had available. And that combined with summer targeted services, we're really looking forward to an opportunity to be able to utilize the bulk of those dollars this coming summer.
One big thing that really helped us financially is we were able to access through this bill, the emergency connectivity, and we're able to access almost $1 million through there. And our technology director jumped on that, and we were able to purchase Chromebooks, iPads, hotspots to ensure that all our students would have access to online learning. The timing of this was fantastic from the bean counter point of view because it was crucial. We just had to reduce our technology budget by about $500,000 just to get through our budget reduction process. And within 8 months, we were able to replenish that with these ARP dollars. We also access ARP dollars to enhance our special education department with the purchases of iPads, Chromebooks, and assistive technology, and new curriculum that would work online. And we spent about $500,000 on that.
My name is Jessica Ellison, and I serve as the chair of the White Bear Lake Area School Board. And I'm an educator by trade, and so I already knew going in that it takes a lot of people to educate a student. But what this pandemic has really shown is that it is really an all hands on deck situation when there's an emergency. And I am grateful, Congresswoman McCollum, and for all of the superintendents and my fellow board members for the courageous leadership that you've shown in such a difficult time. I also want to give a shout out to our teachers and staff and administration, in particular our special education staff. It's a very different sort of education when you have students with high needs, and they've done remarkable work. I also want to say thank you as a parent, Congresswoman McCollum. I'm a parent of 4 students in the district, and as someone who became a 1-income household because of COVID, the meals that have come through the district have been a lifesaver for our family, and I know we are not alone in that. So I am incredibly grateful for the leadership that has made it a little easier for our families. And with that, I will say again, thank you so very much to all of you, and I'll pass it on to our superintendent, Dr. Kazmierczak.
We applied for and received American Rescue Plan funds, including elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, to help mitigate and reverse negative effects that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on our students. With the use of these funds, we've been able to provide our students with specialized support and to use innovative approaches. So specialized services were provided for various student groups. Almost $500,000 was set aside to specifically serve students in our special education program, providing support and learning recovery for students with special needs. Another $120,000 was used to support students experiencing homelessness or those who lack a fixed, adequate nighttime residence. Another almost $500,000 was earmarked for COVID-19 innovative testing initiatives. So we provide our students and staff members with at-home COVID tests in line with our mitigation strategies to keep our students healthy and in school. And with this funding, we're also able to partner with our friends and neighbors, Matamidi, which has been referenced, to open and staff a COVID-19 voluntary testing center, offering students and staff members the opportunity for rapid molecular tests. The bulk of the funds we received came in the form of ESSER funds. We used the funds to launch the Distance Learning Academy option for our families and to minimize the budgetary impact due to lower enrollment caused by the pandemic. And that really was a lifesaver, as we, much like South Washington County, we were in the midst of budget reductions, and that was exacerbated by the loss in enrollment caused by the pandemic. Professional development was another initiative funded through ESSER with priority geared towards student academic support and initiatives to ensure equitable access to educational services as we double down on our efforts to address gaps in student learning caused by the instability brought on by COVID-19. Literacy improvement initiatives and mental health resources for students and staff were also prioritized in the district using the federal support. Operationally, the district was able to purchase COVID-related materials with the funds covering supplies such as masks for students and staff, air filters, sanitizer, cleaning supplies. These unanticipated costs were more easily absorbed because of the federal dollars. So learning recovery initiatives have been funded by ESSER, including the hiring of academic achievement specialists and the implementation of additional multi-tiered systems of support, through which we have added a reading specialist at one of our high school buildings, reading and math core tutors at our elementary schools, and Promise Fellows at our secondary schools. Additionally, we have funded summer programming for students and professional development for staff members focused on elementary reading and literacy. The district continues to plan additional uses for ESSER funding streams as we help our students navigate their educational recovery. The effects of COVID-19, the effects that COVID-19 has had on our district, community, state, nation, and world were numerous, but I'm proud to say that even in the midst of such challenges, we were able to remain nimble and figure out ways to serve our students and families in ways we never had before. And the ESSER funds have been a key to our ability to do so. So some of the wins we have celebrated in this uncertain time have been the following. We've been able to offer distance learning for our families who choose that learning model. Our Distance Learning Academy is in its second year and serves students in grades K through 12. As I mentioned, we have a very robust testing model, and again, mentioning our partnership with Matamidi. We've been able to retain employees we would have otherwise lost due to budgetary constraints. The ability to retain employees for our schools and programs has been essential, especially in these times of staffing challenges and employee absences due to illness. So as the future of school funding is being discussed, I think it's important to keep in mind some lessons we have learned in White Bear through our work at the ground level. The most helpful funding for school districts is that which is provided with flexibility so that districts may utilize the funding in ways that best fit their needs. It is most beneficial for school districts to receive economic and financial relief through a process that isn't overly burdensome and regimented so that they can build a plan that best fits their local situation. And I feel like I'm repeating the Congresswoman's comments as we opened up, because that you get that and you nailed it.
I want to once again thank all of the superintendents. Please pass on to your entire faculty. And that includes, you know, the person who greets somebody at the door, the bus driver, the school lunch lady. My sister was head of nutrition services at one of the other school districts. I talked to all the school districts now. I did you in 2 tranches, so everybody got an equal amount of time to really present. So thank you for doing that. And to the school board chairs. School boards, you know, sometimes people think this is the first time that school boards have faced controversy. Having grown up, I'm not afraid of expressing my age, having grown up in the 60s during the civil rights movement as a child, watching my parents fight for equity. To know that we are having to do that again is something that haunts me each and every day. We should be building up, not having to look back and reposition on hard fought gains in the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the right for school districts and children to be able to, go to a library and feel safe and secure in what they're checking out and what they're learning about. You're in the front and center of that all the time, and you have been as school board members. And now you faced a public health emergency, which became political. I can't thank you enough as a elected official, a former city council person. I know what you're doing. You're not doing it for the glory, and you're not doing it for the pay. You're doing it because you want to pay it forward for the next generation. So to the chairs, please thank all of your board members for standing up and doing what they do, because the superintendents and students need you to do that. For those of you who had slides and presentation, you chose to do it that way. Everybody has their own different way in which they present. Thank you for sharing that with our office. For those of you who had written comments, please do that as well. It's been an honor and privilege to work with you, to hear what we got right and got wrong in the CARES Act from the early conversations that we had earlier. As you know, I'm an appropriator. So, and there's a difference in Congress between appropriators and authorizers. Authorizers pass a lot of bills. I don't pass a lot of bills. I pass the big bills that have the money in it. And so I was really pleased with the feedback that you gave me early on with the CARES Act, that we were able to write into the Appropriations Act, the American Rescue Plan, the flexibility that you needed. I'm pleased to hear that it worked, but I also want to know if we could have done things better. Please don't feel, like you can't share that. We can always learn from our actions. That's part of education, right? You're never done learning. So I'm not, I want to know as we move forward with our appropriation bills, what we can do to help build on what you're doing to make sure that our students can achieve. We each have our own lane of government. And so I appreciate you, putting on the blinker, the merge lane or whatever to get in to tell me what I can do better. And for you're always willing to pick up the phone and talk to our office and share things as we move forward. So the aid that we provided to Minnesota, the $1 billion in aid, I have to say you all get high marks for how you used it. You used it in a common goal of making sure that our schools were, helping our children learn, but you did it in the own unique ways in which to serve your students. And that's what we wanted with the flexibility. I also want to say that I am deeply grateful that in Minnesota, that in the 4th District, for all the care that you provided to our students, to our families, whether it was testing, vaccine information, free meals, the hotspot, whatever you did. I had the opportunity to provide some families with a few meals in their car at some of the sites that I went to earlier. This was something that you hadn't ever planned on being able to do. And you did it, and you did it with grace, and you did it with dignity to those families. So thank you. I don't talk about this very often when it comes to some of the essential services in our families, but I know what it's like as a child to be food insecure and worried about your shelter. So thank you for making the difference in the life of a child. I believe, and I want to thank you for working with me today, that it's my job to make sure the ladder's down, the window's open, and the door is never shut. And that's what you've done for children today using the American Rescue Plan. So I look forward to working with you on other issues as we come out of this pandemic to make our schools more vibrant, more places of hope and opportunity for every single student, regardless of ability, regardless of faith, regardless of race, regardless of just being the individual that they want to be, to make the most of being in this country, to learn how to be good citizens in the future. So stay in touch with Josh. and Sally, and of course with Sophia here in Washington, DC. You're all very busy. Thank you for taking the time out. Thank you to the chairs, because when I was on the North St. Paul City Council, I had a full-time job trying to do all the council stuff. So thank you to the school board members again who joined us today. And I just wish you all the very best. And for as long as we have to, I'm going to mask up. I'm going to get the extra shot when they ask me to. And I'm so excited about what I think what will be happening with recommendations for some of your student siblings who are at home that people have been worried putting at risk. So stay tuned, stay in touch, stay safe, and I will add, stay warm. Thank you so much.